Thanks for the warning. Dean Carey, I think we're ready to go, but we're missing some people. So I guess we're not ready.
How about we give it one more minute, Artie?
It's your show. I'm just here to try to help.
I appreciate that very much. I do. It looks like we're just missing Patrick as far as commissioners are concerned.
I'm here. He's here in the room with us.
Hi. You're very fuzzy on the screen. Nice to see you. Sorry.
Yeah, Karen seemed to want me to come since I live so close, so I came.
You like the company.
Well, great. Then I think we can go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our first meeting this year of the Judicial Compensation Commission. I'm Camille Carey. I'm the Dean of the Law School, and by statute, I am charged with chairing this commission. It would be great to do introductions. Chief Justice, would you like to get us started?
Sure. Thank you, Dean. Hi, everyone. I think almost all of you. Shannon Bacon, I'm the Chief Justice of the New Mexico Supreme Court, and I will hopefully provide a little bit of context and then be a looky-loo for the rest of the meeting. But thank you, Dean, for having me here.
Thank you. Representative Eli.
Hi, Dean. I'm the has-been of the group. So I'm here to provide historical context. So I'm looking forward to the meeting.
Thank you so much. Mr. Flores.
Hello, I'm Adam Flores, my second year on the group, and I'm also looking forward to the meeting.
Thank you. State Bar President Ben Sherman.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you, Dean Carey. Ben Sherman, State Bar President, and I know we switch off every year with the presidents, and it's so my turn to attend. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Ms. Morrow.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Katie Morrow. I'm a practicing attorney in Las Cruces, New Mexico. I was appointed by the President Pro Tem last year, so this is my second year.
Thank you. Mr. Ortiz.
Yes, I'm Pat Ortiz. I'm a retired attorney in Santa Fe. I was appointed by former Chief Justice Michael Vigil.
Thank you. So that is the commission. Ms. Ebler, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, my name is Karen Ebler, and I have been statutorily required to support the JCC, and I'm with AOC.
Thank you. Artie?
My name is Artie Pepin. I'm the Director of the Administrative Office of the Courts, work for the Supreme Court, and by statute, I'm staff to the commission.
Thank you.
And Carl is here.
Hi, Carl. It's a little hard to see you. Carl, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sorry, we're in the giant conference room with the thing all the way zoomed out, so we'll try to fix that. Dean Carey, Carl Reifsteck, I'm the AOC Deputy Director. Happy to see a bunch of people that I know really well on this.
Thank you. Anne, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Ann Keith, and I'm General Counsel to the Chief Justice.
Thank you. And I assume everyone else who's on the call is here in terms of public participation, but if I'm incorrect, please let me know.
Good afternoon. I'm Beth Wayan. I'm a communications officer with the AOC, and I pressed the button today.
Thank you. Thank you for button pressing. Thank you. So all of the commissioners are present. We've completed our introductions, and you all have an agenda for this meeting. Our next issue on the agenda is a report on the legislative action during the 2023 regular legislative session. Mr. Pepin, please.
So Dean and members of the commission, during the 2023 session, consistent with the recommendations of the commission and also the unified budget as adopted by the Supreme Court, there was a bill to set judicial salaries based on federal compensation for magistrate judges. If you're familiar with the way judicial salaries are set, there's a statute. The statute says you set the pay of a justice not the Chief Justice, but all the other 4 justices. And then there's a progression downward from there as to what the other judges get paid. Court of Appeals, 95% of the justice pay. District judges, 95% of the Court of Appeals. Metropolitan Court, 95% of the District Court. And magistrates, 75% of the Metro Court. 2 things that were in Senate Bill 2, which was the bill last year, were to set the pay of a justice at the salary of a federal magistrate judge. 203, I forget what it was, 206,000, something like that. And also to remove the magistrates from that progression in the salaries, because the magistrate judges, which are our non-lawyer judges in the magistrate courts, courts of limited jurisdiction, are paid sufficiently, more than we actually targeted them to be paid before last year's compensation increases, and we wanted to decouple them from the justices. The governor vetoed the bill, which sailed through the legislature, and she did give us a message this year, which is good, because in 2022, we had a bill, also Senate Bill 2, which did what I just said, plus other things, including changes to the retirement funds. And the governor pocket vetoed that one. So we don't know if her veto was because she didn't like the salaries, or she didn't like the retirement proposals, or what. So we sent a much more streamlined bill to the governor last year, and she vetoed it, but she said she didn't like relating salaries for judges in New Mexico to the salaries of federal employees, or in this, well, magistrate judges are employees. The district judges are obviously Article 3 federal judges. She mentioned case backlog, and she urged the legislature to reconsider the matter and work with her to develop a targeted approach to compensation for judges and justices that reflects the needs of our judicial system. So we're hoping we hit that target this year. With the challenges we've had with the governor rejecting bills 2 years in a row, the Chief Justice formed a commission to look at a whole broad range of issues that have to do with judicial recruitment and retention. Some of that is not really relevant to the work of the commission, compensation commission necessarily, such as the way judges become judges and things like that. But compensation is certainly a part of what that commission is looking at. One member of that commission is she the chief of staff, chief, for the governor?
No, general counsel.
General counsel,
She's
sorry.
general counsel.
Thank you very much. The general counsel is on that commission and is providing at least an opportunity for the judiciary to communicate through her with the governor. And a number of members of the commission have been invited by the governor to talk with them. So that's all really good in terms of at least trying to understand what we might propose that the governor might find not that she didn't want to veto. So we're working on that. That is, the commission is working on that. And I think the documents that I put in front of you, I hope, are consistent with things that commission will be able to support. So that's what happened in the 23 session. Separately from the bill, which was, well, anyway, the House Bill 2 provided a 6% pay raise for judges. So they got the 6% pay raise that was in House Bill 2. They didn't get the additional, I forget what it was, 8% or so that would have brought them to the target that was in Senate Bill 2, the one that got vetoed. So that's where we stand today. So I can answer any questions I can answer about how we got there or what the legislature and the governor did during the 23 session, and I referred back to the 22 session as well. But in any event, that's where we are. And I, for one, feel more confident this year that we have a chance to get something that might get signed by the governor, given that we have at least an avenue of communication that we didn't really have before. And Chief Justice Bacon was in the middle of all of our efforts in the session this year and the year before, actually. And I don't know if you want to add anything, Chief, about our experiences in the 2022 session.
I think it's worth highlighting, Dean and Artie, that the year prior, when we first ran this bill, we probably had 8 no votes, and I think this session we had 2. So even the legislature is fully on board, and we even convinced some people that we hadn't previously been persuasive with that this is the right path, whether they think it's because it's going to help recruit judges or it advances their cause in fighting with the governor. We don't know, but I'll take their yes votes as yes votes. And it really, just it sailed through. So we know where the obstacle lies, and I too, like Artyom, is at least there's an avenue for having a conversation now. I asked the governor to allow Holly to participate in the commission that I've put together so that we would have those lines of communication, and a meeting has been set up for 2 of the members of the commission to meet with her to have this conversation that are new voices. And I think that's important as well. Representative Christine Chandler and Representative Ryan Lane are the emissaries this go around, and Senator Cervantes and I are sitting on the bench, and that's perfectly fine. And we're taking our lead on that from Holly, which is a helpful. She's very helpful to be able to help us navigate what might work and what might not.
So, Madam Chair, unless there are questions about that, I can move forward to item number 3. But again, if you have any questions about what happened in the 23 session, be happy to try to answer those questions for members of the commission.
I'm muted, sorry. Any questions before we move to agenda item number 3? Artie, yes, please. Statutory proposals regarding judicial compensation, including judicial retirement. And thank you so much for providing a draft bill for us to consider.
Sure, very happy to do that. I will start by telling you the current justice pay, which is where that statute starts and works its way to the other pay of other judges, is $191,683. And the proposal you saw in the legislation that was sent to you that addresses that statute, which is the progressive salary statute 34-1-9, and would target justice pay at $232,600. Seems like a very specific number. Where did it come from? That happens, coincidentally or not, to be the current pay in fiscal year 23 of federal district court judges, the Article 3 judges, not the magistrates, which are paid 92% or 93% of what the judges are paid. The bill would not tie pay to federal salaries, but it would start there as a good place. Well, those have been around a while. We do compete with federal district court for judges, and we lose. We're really not in the competition very much. Lots of judges will apply, a lot of lawyers will apply for those positions, and we struggle. In some cases, we really struggle to find candidates for district court judgeships, the trial court judgeships in New Mexico. So if we start with that salary and work our way down, all the bill does is start there, leave everything else in place, propose that there be an increase each year based on the CPI-U, which is the standard inflation measure. Take that measure on July 1st or June 30th, actually, at the end of our fiscal year, because that's well in advance of when legislation has to be written. So it gives a number to the legislature. Actual salaries of federal judges change on January 1st, but since we're not tied to them, we have to worry about that. So we would start at 232.6 and we'd get whatever inflation measured in the year-over-year measurement effective June 30th of that year. So right now, as of June 30th, the year-over-year rate was, it really wasn't that high. It was like 4%, somewhere in there. I forget. But anyway, that would have been the number that the salary of the judges would go up. And then we'd never have to talk about judicial salaries again, although the commission would still have work to do. So anyway, that's where we are, and that's where this first piece of legislation would propose to go. The only other thing that the legislation proposes is decouple the magistrates again. Magistrate judges currently, because of the 6% additional raise that went in last year, that went for the magistrates because they weren't decoupled, because that was in the bill that got vetoed, are currently paid $123,528. And that's more than any target I would have supported when we started trying to move judicial salaries. The salaries for judges have moved a lot, 23% in 2 years. The proposal we've got is 21% more. If we get that done, we'll have done what we needed for judges. We do not need to raise magistrate judges' salaries $1, let alone 21%. In my opinion, and I believe that opinion will be echoed by the ultimate findings of the commission that the Chief Justice is working with on judicial recruitment and retention. So that's what this bill does. Takes the magistrates out of the bill. It appropriates a little bit of money to fund the 21%, $3.5 million, and sets a salary at $232,600 with a CPIU escalator built into the statute. So that's what judges would get paid going forward. I have another proposal, which is a little more complicated on retirement. Dean, I can go through that, or if you want to talk about the actual compensation one first, maybe that's a better way to proceed. It's up to you.
That sounds like a good proposal, Artie. Thank you. Let's tackle the compensation issue. Are there questions or feedback based on this draft bill that's been circulated to the commission?
I have a question.
Oh, thank you, Patrick. I'm sorry, Mr. Ortiz. What's your
I was looking at D, and I'm just wondering from a legislative drafting perspective, it says for fiscal year 1995 and all subsequent fiscal years, the compensation shall be provided by the legislature and Appropriations Act. But then, of course, A for starting 2025 sets it in salary. Is there a conflict, or was there some reason for how that's done?
Mr. Ortiz, that's a good question. Probably we would confer with the drafters about whether we needed to amend this. It seems to me you're right that we should say for fiscal year 25 and beyond, magistrate judges shall be set by the legislature and an Appropriations Act, and leave out the other judges and update it to the current fiscal year. Of course, obviously that language is old language. It's just, been stuck in there forever. But we could make it for fiscal year 2025 and all subsequent fiscal years, the annual salary for magistrates shall be set. If the drafters tell us that's a good way to go, I'd agree with it. If the commission wants to recommend that, that's fine with me. We'll line out that as the proposal supported by the commission. So that's a matter of discussion for members of the commission.
Yeah, and I guess you would still have to include fiscal year 2024 to be provided by the legislature, I'm guessing. But yeah, I guess legislative council would have to decide what the best way to implement is.
There's some funny rules over there. Sometimes I understand them.
Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. Other comments or questions on the compensation?
Yeah, I just have Dean Carey. This is Ben Sherman. Just Artie and Chief Justice Bacon and those who know, it sounds like last year or the last time that a bill was proposed, it was for $206,000. Was that? But it'd be tied to the federal. As federal got increased, it would increase with them. And obviously, this is a lot higher, but it would not increase. It would just increase based on the CPIU. Am I correct in that?
That's the proposal, yes, sir.
And I know the governor's, one of her major issues was tying it to the feds. The this is obviously a big increase, which I'm in support of, but I just want to make sure that that increase is that she didn't, I guess, veto it based on the number that was there, that it was really the tying it to the feds, and that she won't balk at this, 21% raise.
I think it's hard to intuit based on two very different veto messages what precisely she is concerned about. But I think the commission, in talking about this, really focused on what is best to have the strongest, most competent judiciary that we can, not really focusing on, the politics of that number. I think the politics of the change in the legislation, or she's clearly said she doesn't like it being tied to the feds. So this would give that opportunity for it not to be tied to the feds. And the commission, in discussing this, said, why are we tying our highest court in the state to the lowest court in the feds? It's a little off-putting. And we should actually ask for what we think would attract the best and brightest, in particular from the civil private practice world, because that's the big crevasse we're trying to fill. And so we aimed for something that was closer to filling that need.
Thank you for that explanation. I appreciate that.
I have another question.
Yes, Mr. Ortiz, please.
For Chief Justice Bacon. I think that this is a nice, simple approach to the compensation question, but in past years, this commission had talked about establishing a compensation commission separate from the legislature that would determine the compensation on an annual basis. I'm wondering if your new commission thought about that or discussed that as maybe an alternative if the governor balks at this number.
It's a complicated question, Mr. Ortiz, because of the legislature trying to use us as the Trojan horse for getting them compensation. So we have now kind of steered away from that particular concept, because we get weighted down by this ongoing conversation in the legislative body about not being willing to kind of call that ball for themselves, and they're wanting to study it and hire people to study it. And so to the extent that really was an honest kind of conversation a couple of years ago, it really got derailed by the folks who wanted it to either be in the ethics commission or be a standalone commission in that fight. We'd rather not be part of that fight and just try and get this done. Because I think we are still years away from the legislature figuring out how they're going to go about providing themselves with a salary. And so we get caught up in that. And that's the reason for not pursuing that at this point. It's just fraught with landmines. And I saw Damon nodding his head a little bit, because I think he knows exactly what those landmines are, and we've talked about them in the past.
Thank you. Other questions or commentary?
I have a question, Dean Carey.
Yes, please, Mr. Flores.
So I'm just trying to understand the federal magistrate pay increases. How do those work? Is that based off the CPIU as well, or something else?
I can answer that, Madam Chair. So every year the Congress, when it passes a budget, which they sometimes do every year, they set the salary for the federal judges, and the magistrate judges are a percentage of that, 92%, I think. So they do that every year. It generally tracks inflation, although it's not explicitly tied to inflation. So I think this year, and they do it as of January 1. So on January 1, I think they went up 4%, because during 2022, we had significant inflation as high as 7% for some months. So they'll do that again on December 31st. January 1st, the salary will change based on what they do with their budget this year. But it's not explicitly tied to the rate of inflation. We propose to put the rate of inflation in this bill because then we don't get stuck at the number, and then that's great for a while, but then we're back in the same place. Okay, times have caught up and now we can't attract judges at the salary we can pay them.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up question, Mr. Flores? No. Okay, thanks. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Morrow?
Thank you. I have a question, and I don't know who I should direct this to, Chief Justice or anyone else. But do we have an indication that this number would work in terms of bringing attorneys, civil attorneys, onto the state bench? Do we have an indication that this is the right target?
Not specifically, I think, in the way that you're asking the question. We've had to kind of make our best guess. Attorneys don't tell us, well, if you paid me X, I'd apply. It just doesn't happen that way because it's not just compensation. It's a really complicated puzzle of pay, the retirement question, which we haven't gotten to yet, plus the political element of it. Lots of people won't apply because they won't close up their practice and then have to run in a contested election and run the risk that they lose and then they have no income.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one piece of the puzzle. We're trying to address all of those to the extent we can through this commission and make different proposals to the legislature. But this is just, it's almost, you know, to quote Ed Chavez, it's almost a three-legged stool, you know, and you need all three to work for people. But we know that this number gets much closer to what, you know, in the last compensation report that came from the state bar, it gets much closer to even what the solo practitioners are making in the state that are in the civil practice. So that's one piece of it, but there's other things that need to change as well. But it's a good question and it's a hard question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the compensation piece? Mr. Pepin, would you kindly move on to the retirement piece of the conversation?
Yes, I will. So I probably should have done like a box chart to make this a little easier because it's a lot of text about some stuff that gets in the weeds on judicial retirement. This commission has in the past made recommendations about judicial retirement and some have succeeded. The last big change was in 2014, but it's time, I think, for some of these changes to be enacted. And so that's why I present them to the commission for your consideration. In the judicial, there's two judicial retirement funds. One is the JRA for all of the lawyer judges in metropolitan district courts, the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. The magistrates have their own retirement fund, the MRA, Magistrate Retirement Account. And the only thing we're proposing to do in the magistrates is on the contribution rate. So I'll talk about that in a second. What we're talking about first, though, is the service credit. Over time, the service credit's gone up and down, and that is how much credit do you get toward retirement for every year you're on the bench. There are considerations that go into this that are different from state employees like myself. For example, of course, judges have to get elected. They have to give up a practice. They can't start, at least in the district court level and above, until they're 35 years old. Often we want them to come in sort of when they're in the prime of their careers, right? If you want judges on the bench who are in their 40s, you've got to make it so they can see a financial benefit greater than, or at least sufficiently close to what they would make in private practice, that they are willing to serve on the bench in public service. What we found under the current structure, which includes compensation as one issue, but also retirement, is that Prosecutors and public defenders apply for judgeships, and people in civil practice do not. Those are great judges. They're smart. They certainly can learn how to do complicated civil cases and divorces and things, but they don't know how to do them when they get there because they've been prosecutors or public defenders for 10 or 15 years. And we would like a mix, we would like to be able to attract a mix of candidates so that the judiciary represents more closely the kinds of cases that are going to come before the court, of which criminal cases get all the attention, but civil cases are actually the majority in our courts of record. So anyway, we would propose, and this proposal was made, and it was part of Senate Bill 2 in 2022 that got vetoed, to accelerate credit in the first 10 years. Right now, everybody gets 3.25%. We would make it 4% for 10 years and then 3.5% thereafter. That way, somebody who's long in their career but is considering time on the bench, say they're in their mid-50s, could think, well, at least in 10 years, I'll have a 40% retirement. They know what the salary is. They can do the math. And that's a nice thing to know. And it would attract, we would hope, judges who may not be thinking, I'll be a judge for 25 years or something like that. Because that 4% is substantially more beneficial than the 3.25%, the proposal also proposes to give the 4% to any judge who's on the bench on July 1st until they've had 10 years at 4%. So they may have earned 10 years already at 3.25%, for example, but they would go 10 more years at 4% and they'd have that combination. Then they go back to the base rate, which this proposal would set at 3.5%. So that's service credit. You think of it in ways that state employees retire generally at 75%, although they can go up to 100%. 75% for me, because I'm under a previous plan, is 25 years. For our current employees, it's, I don't know, 29 years or something, because they reduced the service credit. But it depends on what percentage you want for retirement. Judges, of course, sometimes have that decision made for them because they get retired by not getting elected or retained. It's a different challenge than it is for a state employee. So that's the service credit part. And we propose to change that only for the JRA judges. Leave the magistrates where they are, which is at 3.25%. And then another significant change would be in the contribution rate. So, state employees contribute to the PERA fund for their retirement, and the state contributes an amount. Judges do the same. And the judges currently are at 12.5%. 10.5%. And the proposal would be to take them to 12.5%. For context, the legislature a few years back adopted an escalating increase in the contributions by state employees, so that state employees are now at, as of July 1st, I think it's like 11.92%. It's higher than the 10.5 judges are paying. And the state contributes 19.92% or something like that, very close to 20% for the state employees. Right now, the state contributes 15% for the judges, while the judges contribute, as I said, 10.5%. There's also fees that go into retirement, which is a problem that we propose to eliminate. And we propose to eliminate the problem of the fees by getting rid of them or leaving them in place, but sending that money to the general fund so it doesn't go to judges in any way, and increasing the state's contribution to 21.5%. Those increases would have a significant effect on the solvency of both funds, because we're proposing to do this both for the magistrate judges in their fund and the district court and Metropolitan Court of Appeals and Supreme Court. I also mentioned in the memo that there's $100,000 that goes toward both funds, $100,000 a month. That's a legislative deal that has to do with diverting a little bit of the legislative retirement funding, which the legislature is happy to do. They're at 120% funded. They're not worried. So that money will keep coming in. So that's not a change. That would stay the same. We propose to change the vesting period from 8 years to 5 years, mostly because judges get elected to terms, and an appointment in one election would get you to 5 years. But sometimes you need 2 elections. It just depends on which judge and when they get appointed for 8 years. And then we propose to allow the judges to earn credit as long as they want, up to 100%. Right now, the maximum is 85%. At 3.25 or at the rates we propose, it takes a long time to get anywhere close to those numbers. But the idea is in 25 years, you'd be at 75%. And you can keep going at 3.5% a year after that, up to 100%. It seems counterintuitive, but actually letting people contribute longer so they get a higher percentage when they retire actually benefits the funds, because the flip side is you collect for a shorter period of time. And the actuaries say that makes money for the fund. I don't know, but whatever, that's what they tell me. So what you have is a memo that went to the PERA, and they have actuaries who analyze the impact of these. I don't know what those impacts will be, except I anticipate they'll be quite beneficial, even with this proposed salary increase. As noted, we propose not to increase salary for magistrates. The PERA issues a report every year as of the end of the fiscal year, June 30th, what the status of the funds are and a lot of other data about these funds. They don't do that though, they don't issue it till around October. So we don't have the one that ended June 30th of this year. The one that ended June 30th of last year showed that the magistrate fund decreased from 58.3% funded to 51.5%, largely because they got a big raise that wasn't in their retirement funding, which we didn't intend to give them, but the anyway, judges went up 17%, and that included the magistrates. In the judicial retirement fund, the fund went from 57.3% funded at the end of fiscal 21 to 59.6% funded at the end of June 30th of 22. A lot of that had to do with a substantial investment into the fund of $20 million the legislature appropriated. It'll go up again this year, and I believe we'll find out from the actuaries that it will be on an increasing trajectory toward full funding, 100% funding. In a number of years, that's acceptable to actuarial analysis by PERA, which runs the funds. Right now, they are not on a trajectory to achieve full funding or anything like it for many decades. So those are the proposals on judicial retirement. It is complicated and intricate, and I'm sorry to have put all this stuff in front of you, but I think it's important to recognize that with salary increases, we need to make sure the judges and the state are doing what they should do to make sure the funds are solvent going forward. And that's a minimum of 80% funded within 30 years. That's a target that PRA sets, and these funds are not going to meet those unless we make some changes, which should be increased contributions, in my view, by the judges and the state. So I'm guessing that raised some questions. I will try to answer them. I'm sorry about this is details I wish you didn't have to deal with, but there they are.
Thank you, Mr. Pepin. That was very helpful. Questions or comments?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I should mention, when I sent these to PERA, they indicated that it would take a couple of weeks. I was a little skeptical. We're in our third week. I expect we'll get them in the near future, but I don't have them right now. So I can't tell you. I will, obviously, I'll report to you as part of the data. That's number or something else, 4 or 5. What the actuaries say in terms of the impact of these proposals, but they will be, I can tell you they will be positive, because we're not decreasing funding, we're increasing funding into the retirement funds.
I think we just numbed everyone's brain, Artie.
Yeah, I'm afraid, Chief, that's what happens. I like this stuff, but it's very.
You and
like
I are
said,
the only people who like to noodle about this.
So if none of what I said made sense, please ask me a question and I will try to make it sensible.
I think that the upside that I take away from all of it is trying to attract people that are older than what is happening now. We're getting very young people, and getting very young people's not always a bad thing. I was a very young district court judge. But we need to have a better mix of experience, and making this part of the compensation package that there's something you can recoup and you don't have to serve for 20 years to get there will help us with that second leg of the three-legged stool.
Dean Carey and Chief Justice Bacon and Artie, I know that a lot of other positions like administrative law judges, their salaries are tied to district court judges as well. And I guess that's more for the salary part of it, but I do workers' compensation, and they earn those are paid a percentage of district court judges, but their retirement's separate because they're not part of the judiciary, they're part of the executive branch, I believe. So I know this will only affect judges that are in the judiciary. I mean, under the judicial branch of the government, not any other type of judge. Is that right?
Dean, I can answer that. Yes, that's correct. And I don't know about the workers' comp statute. We have hearing officers, for example, which are quasi-judicial officers in the judiciary, but they're hired as employees under contract. The salary, they can be paid up to some number like 90%, 80% of what a district court judge is paid. We don't have to pay them that. The contracts are whatever they are. So if there's a significant increase in pay for district court judges, it may or may not affect those officers. We would have to find money to pay them. If there are others who are tied to a district judge's salary, that the individual entities would be looking at a cost, certainly a cost increase for the salaries, but salaries are probably a small part of the overall operations. They certainly are as a matter of perspective in the judiciary budget. But yes, the only changes in the retirement system are the retirement funds for judges, the magistrate judges, and the attorney judges, and that's why they're very small funds, and that's why it's easy to make progress on them if we add a little more money.
Thank you. And for what it's worth, I fully support this. I think lowering the vesting from 8 to 5 years, I think is huge. And I think increasing the service credits are also a big enticement. So I think this makes perfect sense to me, and I think it's great, and I fully support it.
Thank you, Mr. Sherman. Other comments, questions on the retirement fund? The proposed changes. Mr. Pepin, shall we move on to number 4?
Sure. So I don't know how many of you, those who are veterans of the committee, will be familiar with past reports, but what we try to do in terms of data is cover a few areas. One, of course, will be whatever the PERA tells us about the proposed changes to the retirement funds and what impact that will have. Also, the National Center for State Courts publishes the salaries of all the judges in the country and territories and whatever else there are out there, the District of Columbia and everywhere else, annually. But the most recent version is as of January 1. They're doing one now as of July 1, but they haven't published it yet. That'll come out in the next few weeks, and I'll certainly provide that to you. I can tell you that right now, the January 1 report they did this past January of 23 had justices of New Mexico ranked 37th in the country. That's after a 17% increase in fiscal year 22. So we had a long way to go, and we're trying to get where we need to go hereafter. I would provide that information comparable to other states. Not that that's really how we set salaries, but anyway, you'd probably be interested in the comparative data based on the July 1 salaries. In the report, we usually put comparable salaries. That is, okay, you pay your justices X. You might be interested to know that the county manager of a certain county makes 15, 20% more than the chief justice of the state or other comparable types of salaries. So we'll provide data on that, which you can choose to include or not in the report. We have done it the last several years, and I will tell you that it opens some eyes to see that who gets paid more than your than your Chief Justice, who has to run a whole branch of government and decide important cases. I can also give you, I tracked the CPI data back 10 years and 20 years to get a historical perspective on what that piece of the statutory change would mean. And it averages like 2.3% or something like that over a long period of time. Depending on what 10 years you picked, it might be 3.2% or 1.9%. But, you know, a 20-year average is a pretty long time. We've had 2 significant recessions during that time, and we've also had significant increases in the economy. So, you know, I think that data might be relevant, and you might want to include that in the report, given that if you support the statutory proposal, it includes that CPI escalator in the data. Other data you want, I'll be happy to try to find it for you. You just let me know what you want.
Thank you, Mr. Pepin. Any questions or comments?
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
When and if we get the annual reports on the MRA and the JRA from PERA, we can include those. But as I said, that's not as timely because we probably won't see those till mid-October. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments on the data considerations? Hearing none, we can move to agenda item number 5. For the commission members to discuss recommendations, schedule draft and final report deadlines, and decide what our process is going to be in reaching the report. So our goal, as I see it, is twofold. First is to decide what our recommendations will be, and then Mr. Pepin's office kindly drafts up a draft report for us. That will be a report to the Legislative Finance Committee and the Department of Finance and Administration. It results in, you saw a copy of the report from last year. So we need to all be on the same page about what we want to have in that draft report. We will then meet to review the draft report and make any modifications that we think are appropriate, and then eventually vote on the final report. So we can have an additional meeting to discuss the contents of that draft report before it goes to drafting, or we can move forward and ask Mr. Pepin's office to kindly work on a draft report for us to review. I would welcome a motion either way, and then discussion. The question is, does the commission want to meet again to consider its recommendations before we ask the administrative office for the courts to prepare a draft report for our review?
I have a question for the Chief Justice. I'm wondering when we might get some feedback from the governor's office on whether this approach might be acceptable.
There's no way for me to answer that question. You know, a preliminary meeting will be held at the beginning of September, but what comes of that, if anything, there's just no way to predict what it might be or when it might come. If I could read the governor's mind, boy, howdy, I would do it and have much more certainty one way or the other about what's going to happen with all of this.
Well, given that, let me make a motion that at least tentatively we ask Artie to draft a report with the recommendation for the statutory proposal and the retirement proposal, with the type of data included that he mentioned has been included in past reports that are updated.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ortiz. Do I have a second? I'm sorry, did someone second? Thank you. Thank you, Representative Eli. Okay, discussion. And Mr. Peppin, does this kind of timing work for your office? I know you have a lot of things going on at AOC.
Well, you're going to give me a deadline to submit the draft to you, and then you're going to have a meeting thereafter to discuss it, I assume. So whatever deadline you give me as a long time attorney, I'll work to the deadline. But, you know, I hope it's not a week from now, but anytime in, you know, probably in mid-September, I could have a draft to you, and then you can see if I got what you wanted in it and make adjustments thereby.
Thank you.
Your statute deadline to report to the legislature is December 1, but traditionally the commission submits it well ahead of that, because if you're making recommendations on budgets on December 1, you kind of miss the boat in terms of getting any appropriation in House Bill 2. Although you don't see House Bill 2 for a while, they certainly are drafting it well before December 1.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the proposal that we will meet? We will reconvene after we have a draft report put together by AOC. Okay.
And Mr. Peppin, if I know you submitted the retirement language to the actuaries at PARA, if they come back with something unforeseen, you know, I'm assuming you'll have to change the recommendations based on that, or you'll advise the commissioner. I mean, I know you said it's probably going to be the opposite, that they will, you know, embrace and they'll make it more solvent, but in the unforeseen event that something happens.
Yes, probably on my own, I would say, okay, we have a dialogue with the PRA. What do you think would help us overcome our surprise that we're hurting the funds, not helping them? And then I would ask them to analyze those, and I would bring that back as part of the data and say, okay, the original set of proposals you had did this. I asked them to make some changes to that. That looks a lot better. Maybe you want to consider, you know, version number 2. I won't wait for the committee to tell me they reject proposals that'll make the funds less solvent.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Vote from commission members. All in favor of the motion, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Excellent. Thank you very much. The motion passes. Mr. Peppin, you floated something around the middle of September. September 15th is a Friday. Does that seem like an agreeable deadline, or would AOC want a little bit more time? No, the Chief Justice says no.
I'm sorry, Chief, I'm happy to hear from you.
So the challenge is going to be the budget book. We also have a whole other, you know, role of putting together the budget proposal and the budget book. And so this decision making has an impact on a cascading impact on those things as well. So that's why I was like, nope, we got to get done.
So Chief Justice, does September 15th for a deadline for the draft work, or do we need to look at an earlier date?
I think I'll look at Anne, because Anne is the one driving the train on the budget book.
I think September 15th will be okay. I've given someone else a deadline of September 10th today, because we really would like to have it mostly done by the 15th, but if you need that extra time, we've built in some wiggle room, so I think we should be okay.
Well, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, but given that the commission will want to look at the draft before you approve it,
yes,
that probably makes more sense. And I don't know when you're going to schedule a meeting thereafter, but probably fairly soon thereafter.
Yes, it would be the following week. Ms. Keith, does that give you enough time if we have a draft by the 15th and we met as a commission the following week, or should we move that up a bit?
If you wouldn't mind moving it up a week, that would be great.
Mr. Peppin, how about September 8th for a draft report?
All righty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Ebler, would it be easiest for us to try to schedule a meeting while we're all together on this meeting, or would it be easier to handle it outside of the meeting? What's your preference?
Madam Chair, I'll certainly leave it up to you and the commissioners, but it's usually easier to get a consensus on a date when all parties are present.
Great, let's go for it then. So we're looking at the week of September 11th, commissioners. If we're getting it on the 8th, we might want to allow a few days to review. So looking at September 12th, 13th, 14th, or 15th, are there particular dates that commissioners are not available the week of the 11th, starting on the 12th? We're looking for whole days of non-availability that we can just eliminate from the beginning.
Dean, this is Damon Eli. At least currently, I'm not available that week. I'm supposed to be in a 2-week trial. I don't know what's going to happen. We're 2 weeks out. We start the 5th and we go through that week. So I don't know.
Mr. Eli, how do you feel about us proceeding without you if we can obtain a quorum?
Great. Works for me.
Okay, thank you. Any other blanket unavailability that week, Ms. Morrow?
I'm currently not available on the 15th or the afternoon of the 14th.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Sherman.
Dean Carey, I have an all-day trial on the 15th, so I'm unavailable that day.
So let's look at the morning, anytime on the 13th or the morning of the 14th.
That's Wednesday, Thursday.
Wednesday, Thursday. Are commissioners available on Wednesday, the 13th?
Yes.
Great. How about 2:30 again? 2:30 on Wednesday, the 13th.
Oh, okay.
Does that work for everyone? Does it not work for anyone? Okay, I think we have a time. So it'll be, we will have a draft report for review by Friday, September 8th. Thank you very much, Mr. Pepin. I know that's a quick turnaround time. And then our next commission meeting will be September 13th at 2:30. Thank you so much. Any comments or questions before we move on to the public comment portion of this meeting? Hearing none, we will move to public comment. If you are a member of the public and you would like to comment, please turn on your camera and state your full name. I will limit your comments to 5 minutes. I will keep the time. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment at this time? Hearing none, I will ask the commission if there's any further business before this commission today. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. I saw Representative Eli Mouth, so moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Morrow. All in favor? Opposed? And abstentions. Thank you very much, commissioners, for your service on the commission. I appreciate your work here today. Thank you so much. And we will see you on September 13th at 2:30. Thanks so much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Pepin.
Sure do.